You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN and Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Christos, and with me today are Amy and Mark. How are you guys doing?
Hello there.
Good morning, Christos.
How was your week?
Oh my gosh. It was a good week. The weather has been so nice. I'm about ready to hit the pool. My pool in my community opened up. So.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Very nice. How about you, Mark?
Oh, I am so excited because later this evening, I'm going to concert in Boston. I'm going to go see Placebo. They've been my favorite band since I was 16. I saw them out in Seattle and they crushed it. I'm looking forward to seeing them again tonight. So it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And I took Monday off so I can recover.
Yay!
Smart guy. Yeah, there's nothing worse than a concert on a Sunday night, and then you got to kind of roll into the office on
right.
Like,
yeah, that wouldn't work.
Yeah. Well, listeners, since the last time we recorded, I think I've been home one day. I've been on the road this week for work. I was in Chicago and then Pittsburgh, and now back here in San Diego. But I am very happy to be home and back podcasting with my friends. All right, Mark, how about you jump into some All Good Worlds for us?
Absolutely. It's been a while, listeners, and I know you missed it. So,
USA to Canada and South America, from the United Kingdom to South Africa, from Russia to Australia, the South Pacific and beyond. This is All Good World.
Yes, All Good World is back. So you guys probably missed it. We haven't done All Good World in a while because we were doing Skate Pod with Star Trek Picard. But I do want to, for this particular episode of All Good World, give a shout out to our entire global community of listeners. It's been a while, so I just want to shout out all of you guys. In this last year, we have been downloaded and streamed roughly 10,000 times. 10,000 times in the last year.
Wow.
Just in the last year. And that is in 30 countries around the world, or actually over 30 countries, many of which English is a second language. So, we have a lot of people listening to this podcast that, might be in the process of learning English. And that's fantastic if you guys are tuning in here, because obviously you've got English East Coast, United States English, you got West Coast, you got a little UK English in there. So there's a whole lot on this podcast. But we are grateful for all of you guys for continuing to tune in and check us out week after week after week. So thank you.
That is quite interesting because I've met people, say like at Star Trek Las Vegas, where they watch Star Trek and that's how they learned English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, well, very well written show.
Yeah.
Well,
God help them if they're trying to learn it from us.
One day you're going to start talking to somebody and they're just going to start talking Klingon to you. And it's going to be, no, that's not English. Okay, that's a bad joke. So it's kind of good to have All Good World back. It's kind of like a little bit of a reset week. How's everyone doing? Having any Picard hangovers? Any like vacuum of missing Picard? Or
it was interesting. We had our Hive Mind yesterday with our roundtable and our patrons. And I felt like the first week, like I did Galaxy Class, the live, and then I did Union Federation. And it was all these, your first reaction. But a week later, discussing it on Hive Mind, that's where we got into the plot. And it's like, well, what about this question? What about this question? And so I felt like I had the super high excitement and then discussing sort of the story. And it's like, okay, I feel like I really incorporated Picard So it's been wonderful. I'm still thinking about it.
Oh, I was just going to say, participated in the Hive Mind. It was an interesting take on the Picard discussion. For myself, as far as your original question was, is there any kind of a lull right now in the build up to like Strange New Worlds? And for me, like I started watching a week ago this show on Paramount Plus. It's called Wolf Pack. Have you guys seen it?
No.
So it's essentially what I noticed about it and what got me to want to watch it is because it has Sarah Michelle Gellar in it, and Buffy, and this is like sort of a werewolf story, and I was like, that's interesting. That you get Sarah Michelle Gellar back, but this one's like a werewolf kind of story, and I'm interested to see where it goes. It also involves some pretty attractive 20-somethings, one of which is gay and likes to take their shirt off often. I'm like, that the eye candy doesn't bother me. So anyway, it's been an enjoyable show. Checking that out. I also plan on rewatching all of Strange New Worlds season 1 in the lead up, and I'll probably go back actually before that and watch Discovery season 2. So I'll start with Discovery season 2, maybe go on to the short treks, and then launch myself into Strange New World season 1, and that should cover me all the way up until is my thought. But
that's very, very, very doable. Only about 20 plus episodes, so not too bad. I've kind of like I'm in between. I've done several Picard rewatches, at least the last episode, including trying to watch it on a plane. That was not recommended because I can't. Every time I watch that episode, I still get teared up, like at all the right parts. So I don't think that's ever going to change, and I'm happy about that, actually, that it evokes that much emotion. Yeah. Amy's like sitting here nodding her head. It's like, yep, it definitely pulls out all the strings, doesn't it, Amy?
It does.
Yeah. But very happy. Like I said, having a 10 days plus now to digest that episode. Very happy with the way it wrapped up the season. And of course, we're all hoping that Legacy is maybe a little further ahead than they're acting like it is. Saw a conspiracy video last night about that. So I'm optimistic, but yeah, I'm really optimistic about Strange New Worlds, Mark. I agree. I'm ready for season 2. Love the show. And the soundtrack for season 1 dropped like out of the blue on Thursday, Friday. I think Rhea messaged our group. She was like, yeah, the soundtrack's out.
Wow.
It's gorgeous too. What a beautifully written soundtrack.
Yeah.
And that was the first theme composed by a woman, right? For the franchise, or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I think you guys are thinking of Prodigy, right? There was this Strange New Worlds, I believe, all Jeff Russo.
No. Jeff Russo did Discovery, and then for Strange New Worlds, it's based on his music, but his understudy is a female, and she's the one credited, as far as I understand.
I don't have the facts in front of me, so I'm not going to dispute anybody. Learned that a long time ago. But so I'm enjoying that a little bit. I'm also enjoying the Picard soundtrack for season 3 a lot.
Yes, I have to give you credit. I did download that and was listening at school, and all my kids are like, is that Star Wars? And I'm just like, really? Do you even know who I am? And then a couple of students are like looking at them saying, no, Miss Nelson likes Star Trek.
Of course she does. Oh, well, it's a good time to be a Trekkie. And I actually am a little happy for the break. It kind of gives us, I didn't get to see The Last of Us, so I want to be like, I think that's going to be my in-between show. So cool. Well, let's jump into our topic for today. If you remember from last week, we kind of queued this up. It is a new series, shocking listeners, called The Architects. And this would be people who literally helped form what Star Trek is today. And who else, other than maybe Gene Roddenberry, than D.C. Fontana, or as we know her as Dorothy Fontana, who helped create Star Trek and helped get it off the ground and was a pivotal writer for many, many, many episodes, as well as somebody who literally helped create species like the Vulcans.
She worked really closely with Leonard Nimoy, and he credits her quite a bit with, building that universe of Vulcan.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things I saw kind of starting off my research on DC Fontana is just kind of what she's been through as a female in Hollywood in the 60s. And the biggest thing that really impressed me with her overall is that she doesn't come across, she didn't come across, she has now passed on, folks, as being jaded or anything. She worked, and when adversity was in her way, she worked through it and found ways around it and found ways to make it work. From there, let's talk off with our first topic of who is Dorothy Fontana. So let's talk a little bit about the woman herself and give a little trivia here. Amy, you want to start us off there?
Well, yeah, she was born in 1939 in Totowa, New Jersey. Her father disappeared when she was 10 years old, so
never saw him again.
Raised by a single mother. I can relate to that. She did go to school to become a secretary. Part that was sort of the main job that women did back then, but she wanted to have more free time to work on novels. And she's, I guess, apparently always was very interested in writing stories.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting in some of the research I saw. She got her associate's degree, and a lot of her teachers were encouraging her, or professors, I should say, were encouraging her to go on to a 4-year degree so that she'd be able to get her teaching certificate. But she was really anxious to get to work. I believe she literally did get to work right away at working for the Screen Gems in New York. And believe she sold her first script at 21 years old. So that's kind of nuts. Talk about like getting to your dream pretty early in life to say, hey, I'm going to be a writer, and get that validation at 21, which I think is probably only fueled her more to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Well, if you figure she'd at that point already been writing for 10 years, because she started writing at age 11, and she, read constantly when she was growing up, and she loved reading about history. That was one of her favorite subjects in school. She was really good at history, and her favorite story when she was growing up, she said that her favorite story was Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which I actually find interesting on multiple levels, because A, it's got this historical aspect to it. B, she loves telling human stories about people coming to understand themselves through their relationships with others. That is cooked into the DNA of a lot of her most famous works, and it's in there in Christmas Carol as well. So I found that really interesting, that nugget.
Yeah, and she actually was drawn more to television shows instead of movies, which, I think fueled her desire to be working on TV shows. And she liked Westerns. You go, Dorothy.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. And how she got into TV, because I think she set out to be a novelist and just ended up, working in, I call it the early days of television. Television was more of an early 50s type of thing, but we're only talking 10 years later. So much of television had changed, and how they basically would sell scripts one at a time, and you got a set price for your script, whether it was a 30-minute show or for an hour show. And that's how you did it. And she was, one of the things I heard her talking about is that, where Star Trek in particular, that was a 54-minute show. Back in the day, there was so little advertising during an hour of television that an episode was 54 minutes, which if you rewatch TOS, you would know that, that they're actually longer episodes. So it was pretty interesting. She said that, compared to the shows she was writing later in her career, it was like taking a whole act out of the job when you would write an hour, because she worked like on NCIS and things like that toward the end of her career.
I find it interesting. She got a job on Overland Trail, which was a Western, but it's considered a secretarial job. And I'm just wondering, would a male writer have been hired as a secretary? Because as this secretary, she was rewriting and editing scripts, which doesn't really seem to me like a secretarial job. But that was her foot in. I just wonder, is that the same path that men had to go through? I just asked the question. But I remember being raised by my mother, who you wanted to be a secretary. What were you going to be when you grow up? I want to be a secretary. And she got her foot in the door through that job. And I just feel like, yeah, a secretary does have at that time, no longer, but it gets you in the door. If you can just start out as being a secretary, that was the path for most females back then.
Yeah, I think you're right in the idea that a guy would have made it much further, because she had sold several scripts before she got to Overland Trail.
Right.
And I think, even her first 6 scripts were credited as Dorothy C. Fontana. And only after that did she go to DC, because it became easier to sell the scripts, as with it being ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
And she was literally being a secretary by day and writing and her own scripts and submitting them on nights and weekends. So it was almost like having 2 jobs. I've got to be the secretary and do all of that stuff, and then I'm doing scripts on the side. And so I kind of feel like, to your point, if a guy had sold a couple of scripts, he would be accepted as a writer.
Right.
We all watched Mad Men, which kind of takes place in that same time.
When I was researching and I saw that, the first thing that came to my mind is all of us, and the fact that we all have day jobs. We all have things that, we need to do to pay the bills. But we get on here and we talk Star Trek and we podcast because we have a passion for it. We enjoy doing it. And that's where her passion lied. She was continuing to work, pay the bills, but her real passion was in the writing of the scripts. Now, if we could all just quit our jobs and podcast, I'm sure most of us would. I know I would. But yeah, that's not the case for a lot of people. So she was just staying focused on her dreams and her vision while also getting her bills paid. And, I can definitely respect that.
It's interesting because you say she has credited as Dorothy C. Fontana, as DC Fontana, and she also used a pseudonym, J. Michael Bingham, which I find interesting. Why use that pseudonym? I'm just wondering what that history is. Would she get more credit? I don't know.
I think they're her brother's names. It was something to that effect what I was reading through, but she didn't use it too much, though. She
just
mostly
3 episodes,
mostly relied on DC Fontana, which most of us know just from those opening credits to TOS, like the big DC Fontana right there. So
did Michael Bingham remind you guys of Michael Burnham? When I saw that, I was like, interesting. It was a little kind of nod, a little bit. I was like, interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if that's just a really crazy coincidence, or if there was some intention there.
Right.
Yeah. So she was working for MGM and got a job working for Gene Roddenberry on a show that he was working called The Lieutenant. Gene liked her so much that when he parted working on that show, he started to work on his next show, which was Star Trek, and he asked Dorothy to continue working for him as his secretary/producer.
So he was working with her on Lieutenant, and she did some scripts. And then when the Lieutenant stopped, he demoted her back to secretary.
Yeah.
I just you feel like you're going forward and then you just go 2 steps back. And so I just want to point that out. I mean, her struggle to get what she got done is truly remarkable, and her perseverance to even just stick with it. It's like, okay, I guess I'm going to be a secretary again. I'll have to work my way back up again.
Yeah, when she was first shown Star Trek, Gene only had like a 12-page outline. So she was literally in there at the beginning of Star Trek and starting to form the input and the ideas that would go on to become the first pilot.
She was given producer credit, though, in Gene's defense, which, that was good of him to do, because she definitely deserved that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of jumping into our topic too here, Amy. So what brought her into Star Trek and her impact and contributions to the franchise, which I think people are going to have the most interest in hearing about, is what did Dorothy bring to Star Trek? So my favorite little tidbit, and it's not quite Dorothy related, but after many attempts to get Star Trek produced by multiple production companies, Lucille Ball decided to give them a shot at her Desilu Studios, now Paramount Pictures. But one of the cool things about learning about more about this in the center seat was that Desilu, Lucy actually not only helped with get the first pilot greenlit, but the second pilot, and Desilu / Lucille Ball believed in the show so much that she was co-funding some of the shortages of producing the episodes, because NBC would only pay so much per episode. Desilu was kicking in a little bit extra to help the episodes get made.
Oh, I did not know that. I mean, I knew
That's
there was a
awesome.
connection, but I didn't know that there was that financial gap that they covered. Wow.
So I really do love Lucy. I always have. And this was long before I knew about her Star Trek connection. So she literally is referred to as the godmother of Star Trek, because without her financing and greenlighting a second pilot, I mean, it could have been dead after the first pilot, but she believed in it so much, she greenlit a second pilot. And that did get picked up and put into series. So we owe a lot to Lucy.
When does that ever happen? A second pilot? I don't remember hearing about it with any other show. That's literally insane. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So while working on Trek, Dorothy was still writing freelance for other projects, and her agent encouraged her to drop the Dorothy from her writing credits and stick to DC, which we talked a little bit about earlier. So it was literally after about, like I said, 6 or so first projects sold as Dorothy, we get the DC Fontana that she would pretty use prominently throughout her whole career.
Dorothy had obviously worked with Leonard Nimoy previously on a project called The Tall Man, as well as Gene Roddenberry's Lieutenant. And there was discussions about, casting early on when they were first, talking about, like Captain Pike at the time, and, Una or Number One and Spock. And she was like, Gene, who do you have in mind for this Spock character? And he showed her a picture of Leonard Nimoy, and she's like, yes, that's who I had in mind as well. And so she kind of like backed up Gene in his decision to get Leonard Nimoy on as Spock. So I thought that was really cool.
That is. I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Another thing we owe to DC Fontana is, we may have not had Leonard Nimoy as Spock. And there's so many ifs, right? Like it's such a butterfly effect. If something didn't happen, what would have happened? Because Spock obviously was a big draw for so many people. He's probably more popular than Kirk in many respects, especially in that first run.
Yeah. So Dorothy's first official writing credit is Charlie X. I actually know what that episode is about. I like it. However, it was her work on Tomorrow's Yesterday that gained her that promotion to story editor, no longer secretary. And that's when, she had that distinction of being story editor that continued. And again, at that time, credit to Gene for making this call. Like, you just didn't have women there. If you had a woman, she wasn't the lead, and would have to be paired with men. So here we have this big step forward. And again, credit to Gene for recognizing her talent and giving her story editor.
Something I thought was really fascinating, and Dorothy actually wrote the Bible for Star Trek, and after season 1, having all the actors have had 26, I think, episodes plus. I think actually it's almost like 29 episodes in season 1. of Star Trek. She actually approached all of the cast members of the show and asked for some insights on their characters, trying to form some direction for them in the future, including adding some backstory to some characters. And this whole idea actually stopped me in my tracks and made me think of how Terry Matalas worked with the TNG cast members before doing season 3 of Picard to get some input. And where do you see your characters? Where do you see them now? That kind of like, not every actor gets to have that kind of input on their characters. Interesting that Dorothy was going to give Bones a son, but DeForest Kelley asked specifically to have that child be a daughter, not a son. So the backstory was in the Bible that Bones had a daughter, but that was never seen on screen.
And how amazing. I mean, it just wasn't done. You hear the TNG cast, especially Gates McFadden, talk about they never got to give feedback to their characters. I mean, here are the actors playing this character. And she remembers like Jonathan Frakes could go in, talk to Berman and, oh, I like this idea. But the females couldn't. Gates really talks a lot about this and the contrast to Terry Matalas. And here we have Dorothy doing that right from the beginning. So somewhere along the lines that stopped, but I see her foresight into building these characters. And like what you said, Mark, the beginning, she loves to write stories that are character development relationships. And this, I think, is a good reason why, because she's getting the input of the actors.
Yeah. She was definitely a collaborator. And that is something, that I learned through a lot of research. And she also, she had an eye for talent. And my next note here is that she was a mentor of David Gerald, who penned the classic Trouble with Tribbles. And many people did not want to give David a chance. He was just out of school. He was very, very young at the time. And a lot of people just didn't think, he could be taken seriously as a writer for regular television. They wanted him to cut his teeth maybe on commercials, other things. But she was like, no, I read some of his stories. They're good. And she really gave him his start in Hollywood and brought him on board for Star Trek.
Definitely. I thought it was also interesting that she spent a lot of time on set and also looking at the dailies from Star Trek. So I think that only helped her as a writer to see how things are going and be able to pivot a lot faster than kind of waiting for finished product. And, the distance between watching a finished product and where you are can be months sometimes. So, but she's watching dailies. So, she's writing the next script or the 2 scripts down. You see what's working, what's not working, and what the actors are adding to it, what the directors are adding to it, and you're able to be a lot more informed. So she took the time that sometimes people don't do. You've also heard a lot on TNG that writers were rarely down on the set. They're always, in fact, almost discouraged to be down there. But you kind of need to, if you want to, like I said, make things more seamless and react a little bit more quickly, you got to know what's going on. So after Star Trek, she didn't have much work to do, by the way, on season 3. I think many people realized that were behind the scenes that by season 3 of Star Trek, the budget had been cut so bad, and that with Star Trek airing at 10 p.m. on Friday nights, they knew what was going to happen to the show, and it was happening. So I think she has 1 writing credit in season 3, and she knew to move on. And so from a business standpoint, she wasn't Star Trek was a job. She knew she needed to move on to the next successful thing than to be a part of a show that's about to be canceled. So she did move on, but came back in 1973 to begin work on the animated series as an associate producer, story editor and writer. She brought many of the writers from TOS and oversaw the day-to-day production on the animated series.
Which the animated series was the only episode, or was the only show to win an Emmy. Yay! up to that point. And I just give credit to her. I mean, we didn't really have the title showrunner, but I consider her to be the showrunner of the animated series.
She was, and she also wrote Yesteryear with her one episode she did write, which was by many fans considered to be the best episode of the animated series, which is the one where Spock has to go back through the Guardian and help his younger self.
Yes, I love that episode. See,
There's
I know that one too.
There's a lot of back and forth with the fan base on whether or not the animated series is at all canon. But to my knowledge, nobody questions the fact that episode, Yesteryear, is canon. And it gets referenced, and they mine for that. Yeah.
Well, Lower Decks references it all the time, so in my mind, it's canon.
Oh, yeah, and the Star Trek 09, they pulled from that too.
Absolutely.
With Spock's upbringing, yeah. Well, after that, Roddenberry asked Fontana to join the Next Generation team as story editor, but she wanted associate producer. Again, she was associate producer on animated series, and now she has to go a step back. But they kept asking her to do tasks that were outside of her purview. And thankfully, she joined the Writers Guild of America and was, saying, hey, they're trying to ask me to do things. She had protection. She's like, no, I'm not going to do these tasks. I need to be associate producer if you want me doing these things. Eventually, they did get her to associate producer for TNG. And there's these contentions of, she was working as story editor, but never got paid. Being a member of the WGA got her that money. Paramount settled amicably. And again, just these unions are so important. It gave her the teeth that she needed, unfortunately, because the studio was not recognizing or doing her good. So huge shout out to unions and the Writers Guild of America.
She was actually a 2-time president of the WGA, and most famously president during 1988, the very famous strike that went on in 1988. And TNG fans will remember this because this gave us why some fans feel not only was season 2 shorter because there were less scripts to get done, but they had to reuse a lot of scripts that were written for phase 2 in the 70s just to get content to make season 2 of TNG. And so DC, or Dorothy, we should call her, left TNG after 13 episodes, but literally became the president right after that of the Writers Guild and helped lead the strike, which they called one of the most important strikes for bringing writers up to equity. So, talk about being a pioneer and somebody who's willing to stand up and fight. Some interesting things, though, I'll add about her short time with TNG was that she helped write the Bible for the show. So helping to define what the show was going to be and how certain things worked. I remember hearing her talk in the interview, like they didn't actually sit down and talk about how warp drive worked and what are the different warp speeds and stuff. And this was their big chance to fix a lot of stuff that didn't have any precedent set from the original series, like the little things that needed some direction over time. So she did that, and she I guess we'll call it ghostwrited the novelization for Encounter at Farpoint. So even though that's not her name on the book, listeners, she wrote it. And you can learn more about that, and I would highly recommend the Center Seat documentary series hosted by Gates McFadden from the Nacelle Company, and I think it's the TNG episode has a lot of background with DC Fontana.
The Center Seat was awesome. I think all of us here and All Good Things has seen it at one point or another. Really awesome documentary series. A lot of deep dives, deep cuts. So after Star Trek, Dorothy went on to write for many notable Westerns. As we talked about earlier, that is really where her heart was at. She loved Westerns. not sure if we mentioned this earlier, but she, appreciated the fact that most Westerns featured strong female characters, and they weren't sort of demure housewives. They were gunslingers and, tough women that could handle, the frontier, and they were, assisting in real big ways. Maybe they were the local, doctor or what have you. And so she liked writing those stories specifically because it gave women a lot of opportunities. A couple of notable Westerns she wrote for were Bonanza, which we've all heard of, and Lancer. Now, that stuck out in my head because I had seen Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where they actually reused footage from the show Lancer in that movie, and they sort of spliced, was it Leonardo DiCaprio's sort of body into this archival footage of the show Lancer that was written by DC Fontana. So we may have seen, in an episode, if you've seen that movie, that she possibly had written. So that's pretty cool.
Huh. So with her activism for women, she helped found the Women's Committee because she felt that women were underrepresented in the Writers Guild, and worked hard to change that. Again, I just admire women who see an inequity and work to change it. And she marched in 1973 that resulted in increased pay for writers of TV and film productions. So again, trying to make things equitable for everyone. Doesn't matter. If you're doing the work, you should get paid.
Exactly. And it should be equal as well. But this was beyond just equality. This was about just trying to bring everybody up to, a fair wage and keep up with the times, because, Hollywood keeps changing, right? So, but then, and the way shows get written and the way shows get done change over time. And so you have to you've got to revisit those contracts.
And I think part of that equality goes to representation. Who's writing the stories? A bunch of men? Well, that's not representative of who's watching. And so the first step is to get that representation, and then we can get equality. Yeah.
Right. And even now, so we're a little bit further, we're so much more evolved on this, but getting more than just your cis white male, straight white male approach, having not just women, but people of color, LGBTQ representation and whatnot. Because, life is a rainbow, man. Everyone has to be represented for everyone to feel seen. And, that's important. So she met her husband while working on sculpting backbone prosthetic for a low budget production based on the book Alien. Ironically, he would go on to work with Jim Cameron on his film Aliens.
Huh.
Yeah, it was sort of ambiguous when I saw that. And when she was talking about that experience, she had referred to it as a backyard production. So I don't know really what that means. I just assume low budget. So yeah, I just thought that was cool. Kind of cool bit of trivia.
And her husband was Dennis Skotak?
Yes.
Who was a visual effects artist, which makes sense why they would be sculpting a backbone prosthetic. I get it. And he won an Academy Award for his work on The Abyss and was nominated for his work on Batman Returns. So that's like a power couple right there in Hollywood.
Yeah. That's actually, her husband had a lot to do with why she had 2 tenures as president of the Writing Guild, because as her first year finished, he was going to get a job working on a movie in Russia. And she's like, "You're not going to Russia without me." So she had stepped down as president. And obviously, I don't think that production ever happened, or at least his involvement. So she kind of had quit for nothing. But she came back and was elected a second time to be president. Back to Star Trek. In 1989, she wrote Vulcan's Glory, about Spock's first mission on the Enterprise under Pike and Number 1.
Have you read that novel? I know you read a lot of the novels.
No, especially these older ones. And I first discovered novels maybe a year or two after 89. I don't know when TNG was really getting good is when, and I was reading TNG novels, and I think the only older novel I read was one that had Savick on the cover, so I had to read that one, but I didn't. Interesting though, we do see Spock beam over to the Enterprise for the first time in a short trek, reporting for duty. So
well, any listeners out there, if you have read Vulcan's Glory, James, I'm talking to you, let us know.
Shout out to James. He's been cataloging all the novels and putting them up on social media.
Right.
And he literally makes me look like a loser because I've read books, but he's an encyclopedia. He should be doing his own literary podcast about Star Trek.
I know. And he has all of the numbers, like he is a completist, man. And he's running all the stats with it. Oh my gosh, I love reading it. So many books have this character. Oh, yeah, wonderful.
Kai Wynn. I saw his one this morning about Deep Space Nine having Kai Wynn had 5 covers of the DS9, which was more than some of the other cast members.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
That's funny because he said that because I used to always be like, when's Beverly going to be? When those books were coming out and TNG was still on, I'd be like, when's Beverly going to be on the cover? And she was not getting nearly as many covers as the other people. I mean, Picard aside, but it just pissed me off.
Yeah.
Anyways, rant over.
Yeah. Back to Dorothy. In 1998, she began teaching and mentoring at the American Film Institute. So I, again, applaud her. I love it when people have this craft and are able then to teach the younger generation.
She also, has the distinction of being a freelance writer her entire career. And I saw her giving some interviews in later years of her life where she was talking about the fact that career isn't even an option for a lot of people anymore because people are now, you're just getting hired as a staff writer. You're just going to work on this one show. And she was talking about the benefits of not being a staff writer because, when you're not a staff writer, you can come in with fresh ideas that haven't been tossed around to death before. And you're coming at these characters with fresh perspectives. And I thought that was really unique and interesting comment from her. After joining the Writers Guild of America in 1960, Fontana served on the board between 88 and 90 and between 91 and 93. She was awarded the Morgan Cox Award for services to the Guild in 2002. And she was inducted into the American Screenwriters Association Hall of Fame twice in 1997 and again in 2002. So you go, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Why are you inducted twice? Like, if you're inducted, you're already there.
Yeah, there's different ways to get in.
97 to 2002. That's not a long time period. I wonder what the reason was.
Maybe a couple categories.
They could be different categories. Like famously, like artists will get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame more than once because, like, for example, Stevie Nicks got inducted as a member of Fleetwood Mac and she got inducted as a solo artist. So there could be other ways to get inducted to, for your contributions. So
yeah. Well, and she did have multiple names: DC, Dorothy, Michael.
Yep. And it could be, there's so many different ways. I mean, we can obviously research that. Somebody will tell us in comments. Listeners, if you know, tell us. I thought it was interesting. I did watch her in a few interviews. She did talk a lot about the idea of a writer's room versus independent writing. And I think I really got the only time I really got a negative vibe from her was when she would talk about writers' rooms. Like they were a newer concept and she didn't like it. She liked writing things on her yellow pad it's a legal pad, and then taking it to the computer. And then, like she said, many a times before she ever gave a script to turn in, it had already been through 3 or 4 drafts. So much more evolved script than most other people would do. But as television, how it's evolved into writers' rooms, I think there's pros and cons to that because I think Dorothy also, she had retired before TV had become very serialized the way it is. And it's very, like if you're writing a whole season back to back by 24 or a season of Picard or, Discovery, the way they're all one story. So you kind of have to be together with people to flesh out that whole thing, unless you're doing it all by yourself. And it sounded like she was very much more of an independent writer than she was, the idea of sitting in a room with other people and collaborating together, which, you hear a lot with like songwriters. There's people who like to write by themselves, and there's people who like to write with other people because it sparks creativity and ideas. People collaborate in different ways.
Yeah. And I think with, her trying to go to the actors and build that story, I can definitely see that. She's definitely has credits where it's like those were her ideas. And then she has credits where it was just more of a script overhaul and re-editing and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think you've got to be flexible in what you're doing.
I love the fact that she stayed sort of in orbit of the Trek family, even if she wasn't a part of it. In 2011, she had an uncredited appearance alongside Brent Spiner in the Big Bang Theory episode, The Russian Rocket, where she played a party guest at Will Wheaton's house. Now, if you notice the outside of Will Wheaton's house in the episode, his house number was given 1701, a nod to the Enterprise, and it's so cool.
Yeah,
I am going to have to go back and watch that. I did not even recognize her. I know the episode.
Right? I do too. I'm going to have to go back and watch too. That's exactly what I was thinking.
How fun.
Yeah, she definitely did stay, to your point, Mark, in the orbit of Star Trek, whether it was conventions or just, people know of her contributions. And so she definitely had respect outside of Star Trek and most definitely inside of Star Trek. I'm really glad too. Dorothy had, I'm glad that, through, the final years of her life, she did take the time to sit down and record many, many, many interviews because, Dorothy has now passed on. She passed away on December 2nd, 2019 at the age of 80. And so, the stories are done. So I'm glad she documented quite a bit of her time on Star Trek and the time of her career.
So I remember when she passed and just, it was like Leonard Nimoy. To me, it was a loss to the Star Trek community. Did you, Christos, ever get a chance to meet her at any convention or? Yeah, I didn't either.
No, because my first STLV was 2017. And I'd gone to conventions when I was in high school, but they were those TNG ones, those TNG weekend conventions. So I did not get the opportunity to ever see or meet her in person.
Well, I'd love to go through and talk about some of the great credits that she has. She has a long list of credits in here. Again, I just went through her IMDb. I pulled out a bunch of ones that I thought people would know. There's some really cool ones on here. We already talked about The Tall Man that had Leonard Nimoy in it. The original series, Bonanza, the animated series, the $6 Million Man action adventure series. That was cool. Dallas, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe she wrote for. Land of the Lost. That was another good one. Logan's Run, The Waltons. We've all heard of that. Of course, that makes sense. Tracks with her love of all things Western. Star Trek The Next Generation, we mentioned that. She has a writing credit for Deep Space Nine as well. She went on to write quite a few episodes for Babylon 5. The Lonesome Dove, The Outlaw Years, which I guess was like a sequel. Reboot, I put that on there because when I was a little kid, that was one of my favorite cartoons. Did you know that show, Christos, Reboot? So Reboot was the very first cartoon ever made entirely computers. It was the first CG show, and now they're doing it with all the cartoons. But in the 90s, it was the first time they ever used a computer to completely animate a show. And DC Fontana was one of the writers on that show. Earth Final Conflict, I believe that was also a Eugene Roddenberry production. She also did writing on the Star Trek Legacy video game,
which I played.
Oh, I did not play it. Was it good?
Yeah, it was good. It was, it was about 15, 20, no,
Yeah.
15, 16 years ago. It was pretty good.
Also, one of the very last writing credits she has was for Star Trek Phase 2, which is a Star Trek fan production. And you can find their videos on YouTube. It's like the continuation of the original series. And, they have different actors playing, of course, Kirk and Bones and Spock and whatnot. And this episode featured Walter Koenig's return as Chekhov. So he played obviously an aged version of himself talking to his younger self, and they have this really awesome dialogue between the two. And I watched that last night, and it was totally worth watching. For DC's writing, as well as Walter Koenig's return as Chekhov, which was glorious. I loved seeing him in his old, TOS style uniform.
Well, that wig he wore was pretty spot on too.
The wig.
I saw a clip of that this morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she literally worked. I mean, and beyond Star Trek, I think she wrote that episode of DS9, which was that first real Dax episode where she's finding out about some crime that Curzon Dax had done, and so she really kind of helped also, shape Trill in the sense there too. Having that was the show only being seen once before DS9. So I thought that is a little interesting little footnote in a long career. Wrapping up here a little bit, what are our final thoughts on Dorothy Fontana? Amy?
Learning about all of her contributions and the struggles that she took to get there really makes me, I admire her. I admire her perseverance. The fact that she not only thought of herself, but thought of others and wanted to get that equality and representation in a time where women were not in the production element. They were the secretaries. They were staying at home. And she forged a way for many people, especially women. I love that she took an active role in the Writers Guild. Again, just fighting for those underrepresented. And I just am so impressed with her. And again, like I said, I remember when she passed and just that hole in my heart where it's like we lost an icon in Star Trek. And I am so glad that we started this new series talking about Dorothy. So I'm very excited to discuss more, but so glad that I got to learn a little bit more about her.
I think it's going to be a fun series, being able to go and actually talk about some of the behind the scenes creators, because as much as we love all of these shows, they wouldn't be here without the people that, brought them to the screen, all of the artisans, the writers, and the directors and the prosthetics team, and all of those people really have, put their blood, sweat, and tears into making our favorite show possible. So I think this is going to be a fun run. And something that I pondered while researching on Dorothy was the fact that she was able to accomplish so much because she believed in herself and she focused on her goals and she worked very hard towards it. And what I got out of that was that if you focus on your dreams and your goals, you will meet people along your path that will help you onto the next rung of the ladder to get into the direction that you're headed. It's only, that's all that can happen because you're manifesting your dreams to happen. You're staying focused on them. You're working towards that. And along the way, you will meet people that will assist you in getting to the next spot and believe in you because you believed in yourself. And I think that's really, really important. She never gave up on herself and her dreams. And that's something for us all to think about.
Well said. Well said. Well, listeners, I hope you really liked this episode. It is a big departure than our normal format not to be discussing a specific episode or movie or series as a whole, but actually talking about some of the more behind the scenes things. So thank you for sticking with us today on this one, because like I said, how to approach something like this when you talk about somebody's whole career is kind of it's a daunting task. And I will say a lot more research for your hosts than we're used to having to do for a weekly episode. What I want to kind of put out there to our listeners is, are there anybody behind the scenes of Star Trek that you'd like to have us talk about a little further? We obviously have some ideas and a short list, but if there's anybody you're looking for us to do a deep dive on, please leave us a message somewhere online, or one of the many ways that we'll talk about you can reach us.
Joe Manowski.
So, Amy, what kind of homework do you have for our listeners next week?
All right, listeners, your homework is to watch Prodigy's Ghost in the Machine episode, because we will be covering our holodeck malfunctions series. This will be part 6. I'm very excited. Who doesn't love a good holodeck gone wrong story?
That was kind of a crazy episode too, even, for a kid's show. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. Well, listeners, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's episode, and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts at AllGoodPod. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcasts. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us there by searching their master feed. So, Amy, where can people find you when you're not out there being a trailblazer for women?
Oh, well, I hope to be doing that all the time. So in addition to that, you can find me here on the network, where I'm co-hosting Galaxy Class and Union Federation. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place, Facebook group, BQN Collective. So, Mark, where can people find you when you're reading Westerns and playing cowboy?
Well, true story. Growing up, my father and my grandfather were huge Western fans. I'm actually Native American, but ironically, my father and my grandfather loved watching Westerns, the classics. And when my grandmother passed away, I spent about a month living at my grandfather's camp out on a lake in Maine, and he had a satellite dish, and so we could get all these channels like Stars, and they had a Stars Western channel at the time. And all I did for that month with my grandfather is we'd go fishing and we'd come home and watch Westerns. And so I have watched a lot of Westerns in my day, so it brings back good memories, and probably many of them were written by DC. I have no idea.
Right.
So when I'm not doing that, people can, of course, find me in the BQN Collective Facebook page. They can find me on Twitter at MarkWhite207. And if you become a patron of the network on Patreon, I host a show called It's Green, and that's a lot of fun. So become a patron at the $5 level. You can check it out. And there's also Amy has a show too. We'll bring that up in just a second. Also, I've been really busy campaigning for Star Trek Legacy. So there is a change.org petition out there. If you haven't signed it yet and you at all like Star Trek Picard Season 3, please get on and sign that petition. It's surpassed 40,000. It's already blown past what they did for Strange New Worlds for that petition. So let's see if we can get them to 50. And Christos, where can people find you when you are not being a friend of Dorothy?
Friend of Dorothy since 1977. Let's see here. You can find me in the BQN Collective on Facebook. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at GreekGeekSD. That's for San Diego. And also here on the network, hosting What's the T-Bev? Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a star rating and a written review. That helps others to find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN. This way you won't miss any of our fine shows like Union Federation, Galaxy Class, History with the Szilagys, Infinite Diversity, Mickey's Marvels, Sasquatch, What's the T-Bev, Trexpert's Quiz, and our latest edition, The Captain's Couch with Jeremiah.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and Mark for our artwork each and every week.
If you would like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We'll add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion, which happens on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us as we search out
All good things.